Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Looks Like We Made It. I'm Issy Howell and I'm joined by my dad Chris to talk all things video marketing. We are the father and daughter who run the fabulous video production company Howell Film, and each week we'll be discussing everything like what happens behind the scenes on our projects, getting results from your video content, how to start using video in your business, and plenty more to come. We will be joined by some wonderful special guests, including our own awesome clients from all kinds of industries, as well as our own film crew and even our own family to candidly converse about creativity. On this episode, we are discussing live events versus virtual events, and to help us answer this question, we are joined by Paul Andrews, founder and CEO of Family Business United, an organisation which celebrates the importance of family businesses in the UK. So without further ado, let's get started, and of course never miss an episode every Tuesday by giving us a follow or subscribe, as well as finding Howell Film on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn. Let's go.
Let's do it.
There we go.
You need to take a breath.
There we are. So hello Paul, how are you?
Yeah, afternoon Izzy, good thank you. What an intro.
Yes, I know. I can breathe now. But if you want to kick us off then by telling our listeners a bit about you, a bit about Family Business United.
So yeah, I created an organisation that supports and champions family firms. 20 years ago I started doing this, but 10 years on my own. So the last 10 years has all been about celebrating family businesses just like yours.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's kind of how we ended up kind of being acquainted with you and Family Business United, because obviously we are a family business and it was a massive community that we weren't expecting was all together.
It's a massive untapped in some regards. It's kind of, it's all out there, and it's only when people like Paul open your eyes to just how important and how big family business is to the UK economy that you actually take notice and think, wow, we're not alone.
You're not alone. You're definitely not alone. And just some context, I guess, there are about 6 million family firms in the UK today, and they employ about 12 million people. And the reason that I guess people haven't really heard of them is because they tend to think of things in silos. So you'll think hotel, construction, property, but you won't understand that actually families own businesses in all those sectors. And when it comes together, it's a real fruitful part of the economy, and it makes a massive difference every day.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think so. The event that we'll be specifically talking about, I know Family Business United host quite a few across the country in lots of different capacities, but it is the biggie, I believe, the Family Business of the Year Awards, and we've been involved with you for the past couple of years doing that, but how long has the awards itself been going on for?
The awards themselves started 9 years ago, so we've just finished the 9th year, and you guys, if you want to plug, you guys are fantastic at what you do, and you helped us go virtual 2 years ago during the onset of the pandemic, and we haven't looked back really. So yeah, you've really introduced us into just a new avenue of getting our message out there.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we didn't pay you to say that either, so that's good.
No, you didn't.
So Paul, when we got involved the first time round, really when we were in the thick of the pandemic in 2020, that was almost like not a knee-jerk reaction, but it was a kind of like all hands on deck, we've got to do something, the show must go on kind of thing. Obviously in 2021 you had chance to reassess your options, and I know we went back into kind of a degree of lockdown, and it was still obviously very serious, but do you feel that I suppose in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is, would you have still done a virtual event, or would you have done a hybrid maybe, or would you have gone live again?
It's a really good question, and it's one we've thought about long and hard, I guess. As an organisation, we've put events on, as he said, around the country. So we do road trips in Scotland in a normal period, a normal year. And the pandemic really threw us a curveball, because actually as an organisation, getting out and meeting families and talking behind the scenes and factory tours, everything was thrown on its head. And if I'm being honest, March 2020, I think it was, we held our last in-person conference in London, the Great British Family Business, on the Thursday, and the following Monday we went into lockdown. And I hadn't really seen it come. We'd all seen it coming, but I hadn't really seen it coming. And at that point, like many people, I probably wasn't aware that the virtual world existed. And that comes with a caveat, to be fair, because I do a lot on social media, and we've done a lot of filming and stuff in the past. But actually, I didn't know what Zoom was. I'd never heard of Teams. So we really had to stand back and say, what can we do? We need to survive. And we need to give our family business community things that will help them grow during the pandemic and continue to evolve. So talking to people like you in terms of the use of video and how video could help was a start for us. Getting underneath the skin of what a virtual event really was, because I didn't know. It's very different, isn't it, between being in a virtual event and being a TV show. And so there was a lot of learning that went on in a very, very short period of time. And like everybody else, we took part in lots of webinars. We did lots of webinars ourselves, but actually the virtual event was something more. And I knew for the awards, they're well attended every year in person. People come to London, but they're quite an expensive thing to put on, and people commit time spending money on hotel rooms and bringing their teams to an event. And they're quite bespoke, quite small, 200 people come to them. So the flip side was that, well, actually, if we go virtual and we talk to somebody like you guys, one, what can we do? And two, how can we make it so it's got that personality and it's not just watching a show? So I wanted to do something, especially for the awards, that kind of celebrated family businesses in a way that you take all the best bits of awards and you engage with people and it all comes to life, and they get to celebrate, they get to do the social media things, they get to work with their teams. So you kind of help to bring that together. Ups and downsides, I guess, of both. Sponsors want to meet people. And physically want to meet people. So from a sponsor perspective, you could argue it's not as good doing it virtually. But actually, if you learn and apply the right criteria to being a sponsor, it can be more powerful because they have their branding when they host the award themselves. They tell everyone who they are. They're talking rather than just being on stage presenting. But also it gets their personality across. And they can then engage with the audience on the feeds and all the other thing live on the night. So they get to talk to everybody. And I think the first year we had, it was a complete lockdown. So people were staying at home and they weren't even allowed to go into their offices with their colleagues. So we had, I think, about 1,700 people live streaming the premiere on YouTube, which was fantastic. Flip side of that is it's incredibly scary because when it counts down and you've got 30 seconds to go and the screen goes blank, you've got no idea if it's going to work or not. So you're sitting there terrified that you've lost everybody. And I just remember the first year, Linda, my wife, saying, well, what's the contingency as the screen went blank? And we didn't breathe for 20 seconds, dreading what was happening. And I just like, well, there is none. This is it. It's a premiere. It's live. There is no contingency. And it worked beautifully. And the feedback was sensational. We had better feedback than we've ever had and better engagement. So I think as long as you do it and it's real and you're being honest with your character and personality and doing it the way you want to. We filmed everything, as you know. I filmed everything in my garden with birdsong and butterflies in the middle of the afternoon on the hottest day in the year with sweat dripping off my head in a DJ. But actually, people liked the fact it was human and it had a personality, and the way you put it all together for us was fantastic. So, yeah, I think it has a real positive place to go. And going forward, I think there's room for it to continue to be a virtual. I'm not sure about hybrid yet, but definitely a virtual event going forward.
But I think that because I was the one who I was the editing part of it, and you helped with the animation and stuff. And the biggest logistical thing that we had was the fact that normally when we do an event, we're very present. Like the people are in the room, the cameras are in the room, the microphones are there, everything's set. But we had the added thing of that everyone was scattered across the country and no one could leave the house or come to a studio or stuff like that. So I remember me and you having to really navigate getting what felt like hundreds of people just to all. We had to let go of a bit of the quality control of, people might not film things the way we would do it and stuff, and how can we make sure that all of that comes together and stuff. And that was the most interesting part for me in terms of pre-production, because I'd never had to collate content like that before. I'd always have to do it. We'd always do it ourselves or have that kind of control. And I thought that element of having people in their own homes across the country with their families applies really nicely to the family business message, because we were sat together in the garden watching it. I mean, we'd seen it before, but we were sat together and
we'd seen it about 300 times by that point. So.
but it was a nice sort of family evening, and it had a very different approach, I suppose.
I personally really like the honesty of, because when you work professionally in filmmaking, videography, whatever, it can be quite clinical. It's all everyone likes to speak in acronyms. It's all very kind of technical and I like it. I like it when people do stuff on their phones and they've got their thumb over the microphone, or they're wobbling it, or they're missing the someone's head or whatever. And actually though, you get I think you get a real beautiful honesty that I'm not trying to undo what we do for a living, obviously, but actually, I think it's a thing. It's a thing of beauty in some regard. I like that.
I think you're spot on, Chris, because I think for me, one is, going back to your point, we had no idea the quality of we had to ask everybody that took part to record an acceptance speech. And lots of family businesses have never done proper PR or video or any of this stuff before. So they're in our hands, but you still say to them, hold your phone landscape and just record 2 minutes or at most 2 minutes with some gaps. Some did it beautifully. Others had to be handheld a lot more. Yeah. But actually, what you got was real honesty. And if you go to an awards evening, they've thought about, if I win, I'm going to say this, this, and this. And yes, they've thought about the video recording. But I think because they're suddenly in front of their phone being recorded, there's that level of, they delve into their inner self and their inner thought process, and they become a lot more relaxed and a lot more honest. And for me, even the winner's speech this year, Thomas Martin from Arco, oh my God, he was in tears on his phone, and it was real and it was honest, and it was generations of history that's been pent up into this award win that was just phenomenal. And I've spoken to him since. We actually had a lunch in a local pub last week, and he came down and I gave him the trophy, and he was just charming, and the words were really heartfelt, really meant. And actually, I think we got, with the way you crafted it, we got this beautiful sense of every award evening. And it was beautiful because you missed out all of the sitting around waiting for what I class at some awards, and obviously different awards evenings are different, but the cold rubbery chicken meal to be gone, and then you have to have drinks, and then you listen to a sponsor, and then you listen. And by the time you get to the awards, they're almost like not the main event.
Yeah.
And you put the award front and center. It was what this was all about. And I think the audience got that right from the start. They were delighted to have been finalists. We did all the social media and PR up front. They knew what they were in for. And to be shortlisted and shown on the screen, they had their moment in the spotlight. The winners were announced by the sponsors, so they had their moment in the spotlight too. But you then heard from the winners that got that speech across in terms of what they did, who they were. And I think the essence of what you pulled together was beautiful, and the feedback was phenomenal. So I think we ticked all the right boxes because we took all the best bits, and then we took out the bits that kind of outside of your control that actually everyone gets a bit bored with too long a dinner and too much waiting around. And then they had time this year in particular, because I know a lot of the finalists got together with their members of their family and also their teams, either in the pub garden or at home or in the office. And they actually ordered in pizzas, and they sat with a few bottles of wine, and they had their own team get together, which they would never have at an awards. It would be the chosen few that would go, whereas they brought their whole team together, and it played out on social media. And I was sent clips afterwards of some of the next generation. So the next generation, one of the paint families up in Manchester, the marketing director sent me a picture of his son, who, when he saw HMG paints on the screen, you could see his son jumping up and down, go, "Daddy, you work there." And it was just beautiful to see the moment captured in terms of what it did and how it impacted people. So I think there's definitely a place for virtual going forward. And I think we'll never go back to just doing solid physical events. As an organisation, I can't wait to get back out, and we've done a couple of physical events since, but in person is really important to us. But it's now the strategic plan for us is getting the balance right going forward to make sure we hit the mark.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, from our perspective as well, it's. I mean, all businesses have had to rapidly adapt in one way or another during the pandemic, and obviously up until February the 29th, 2020, half of our business came from live events. So, by 1 month later, it was all a bit kind of, gosh, we're from a full order book to a very, very less full order book. We had to adapt quite quickly. However, the skills involved, they're still the same. And it's interesting you're saying about the way that we tightened up the awards night for the broadcast, because that's an editor's lot. The difference between kind of a professional editor and not a professional editor is often just how brutal the professional editor is. The 70% ends up on the cutting room floor, and only the 30% makes it into the show. And I think that's what gives it pace. So there is, we were always, we were a little bit worried at the start, thinking, well, wow, everybody out there is now a filmmaker by definition, because they're all on Zoom and Teams and everyone's doing their own thing. But actually, you can't undo the 30 years of experience we've got as a business. You can't undo the fact that we do this all day, every day. And that kind of, I think the key thing is to distill down everything you're sent. And as I did see Izzy with, hundreds and hundreds of bits of clips and, bits and pieces, logos, etc. But it's about distilling them down into a really neat package. And I think that we've got that blend now really quite nailed down.
Yeah, it was the first one I know, because we were all kind of going by the seat of our pants on that first one, because that was the one where we all sort of went, right, okay, we'll work together and we'll build something and we'll see what we can do. And that was one of my first experiences of doing something completely in the edit suite. I mean, in my head there's always that natural process of I see the client, I get the film, I get the footage, and I cut it together, and that was a bit of more of a comfort zone for me. But I really enjoyed getting the content from the family businesses and stuff. Like, some of the stuff is just brilliant, and you'd see that real kind of, I'd feel like kind of like a bit of a sense of pride really when I'd see their little videos put together. And I think it was Coleman's this year. I remember theirs was brilliant, where the three generations, and they got everyone in the shops, and it doesn't matter on their side if you're a professional and you're amazing and you've got all these cameras, but my job as the editor was just there to put everyone on the stage basically, and they really showed up for it and did a great job.
No, it's true.
And they were brilliant, and the energy they gave to the win. Obviously, they didn't know at the time they'd won, but they gave the energy through the film. And I think the delightful piece for me was when you say you had the three generations, and actually the father who founded the business and the older generation missed his cue, and his daughter, the second generation, elbowed him, and then they left. We filmed it 15 times by then. We weren't going to film it again. But actually, I loved that because it was real, and it really captured the essence of who they are and how they integrate and stuff. So you're right. Your job was probably made easier by some of the footage, but then it's not, because it's constrained by every piece of footage is different, and you have to try and make some sort of commonality and process and flow. So there is, I mean, we can all do webinars and we can all do Zoom calls, but that doesn't make us editors and producers. And there's definitely a space for people like you to do what you do, because it just polishes it, and it takes something and puts it in a way that manifests the essence of what we want to do. And for us, working with you, because you're a family firm, it's the icing on the cake. We try and be true to who we are as a business. And look, we took a punt the first year, and I know you took a punt. We got the finished video to review on Monday night at midnight when it finally downloaded, and we were going live on Thursday. So we did sit on the seat, sort of fly by the seat of our pants the first year. And the second year it got clearer, and we knew what we were doing a bit more. But it's about asking for the things up front, and I guess there's a project manager and timetable. So you pushed and prodded in all the right places to make us do what we needed to do. But working with families is always tricky, because there's always, as you know, the pandemic's affected in many different ways. So some have been working firefighting, others have been thriving, but still busy with no staff and all sorts. So this year I think was more challenging than last year. But I'm already looking forward to next year, because I think we can do it and make it even bigger.
And on a more sort of general note about family business, Paul, is there a sense of optimism with the people you're speaking to? Is there a kind of, I would never say it's behind us, but I'd like to believe we're through the worst of it, and certainly for us, we feel like there's an energy building. We've got some quite big projects booked in from October onwards and into 2022, and I'm just wondering if that's your experience.
Yeah, family firms are resilient, and some of the entries in the awards this year, multi-generational, so they've been around for 200-300 years, and the oldest goes back to 1515, so wow. 26 generations. So there's longevity there, and the family businesses that plan for the long term and the kind of stewards for the next generation really have plans to safeguard themselves. Notwithstanding, some have struggled because they didn't see this coming, or they were in such a unique position in terms of maybe supplying the hospitality trade, they would never have experienced or expected the whole thing to fall over. So there have been moments where all businesses in the last 18 months have stopped and reflected and had to think. But there's definitely there's an air of positivity. There always has been, in terms of that they will survive. They maybe come out a different business to the one they went into, or they may have diversified or done something differently. But there's always been that we are going to make it. But now talking to them, there's a real energy. A lot of them are struggling in terms of recruitment. So the fact they're recruiting and they can't get the people is a really positive sign. There's still an uncertainty in terms of quite what the next 6 months holds. And so for organisations like ours, it becomes slightly more of a challenge, because we can put lots of in-person events on, but that doesn't mean anyone's going to come to them. And so you've underwritten an event and it costs a lot to not put on an event, sort of thing. So I think the next 6 months with events, they will start to unfold, and people will start to come back. But just flicking forward to next March and our big annual flagship conference, the Great British Family Business, that's going to be virtual. Not because I think we need it to be virtual, but as in we need to because of the pandemic, but talking to the people that came to that last year, which was managed by a family business up in Scotland, we had people from all around the world come, and our members from the kind of the northern parts of Scotland and the southwest parts of Cornwall that wouldn't have travelled, in their own words, we would not have come to London to the event, but they joined and they enjoyed it, and they're already booking for next year. So for us, there's a commercial issue. We have to make sure we give the people that want to come to the thing what they want. So we're balancing our model now with in-person and online virtual stuff. But I think there'll be more from us, more strategic thought pieces in terms of what we do locally, in terms of maybe smaller get-togethers, regional dinners. Having said that, we're doing an in-person road trip around Scotland in a couple of months' time for 10 days, visiting family businesses and going out to see them. So there's that hybrid mix, I guess, in terms of what we do. But I'm not going to go down the hybrid route of a hybrid event, because my fear is they don't work for either the people in the room.
So are these all distilleries that you're working your way through?
To be fair, there are a couple. We're actually going to see, and I'm really pleased, we're going to see at least 2 of the winners from the awards. And for the first time ever, we're going to the Outer Hebrides. So we're going to one of the Scottish islands. So we're going out to meet Essence of Harris in Harris on a ferry, and driving down through Harris and Skye. And I'm looking forward to that immensely. But just to go and see these businesses where they operate and where they're so proud to be from, and especially someone like the Hebrides, where they're actually looking to try and build a community to provide jobs and income for the community at large and to keep the islands alive. I think it's fascinating that we can go and see them. So, yeah, no, we are going in person to see them, and there are, I think, at least 4 distilleries on the map already, to be honest.
Rightly so, but no, that's it. I mean, because we were involved in the conference that you did in March and stuff, and we were booth holders, and that was our first experience of a virtual booth, and that was like it was weird at first to kind of get around the difference in how you communicate with people, but once we got the hang of it in the morning, we were flying. It was
I like the random visitor thing. That was like the spin a wheel and someone pops up, and it was interesting to see, like, you know, where, and they were kind of, who are you? Oh, you know, and I quite like that. It's just random.
It was really good. I think and it's great to see it. There's more of that moving forward and into 2022, which is brilliant.
But there's an educational piece, isn't there? Because actually the first time you do this sort of stuff, and it's virtual speed dating almost for businesses, then you don't know how it works. But the fact you can extend a conversation, you can exchange business cards, it's no different to going to an event and actually seeing them. But actually, because it's short-lived, one of our Australian contacts bumped into one of our Boston contacts in the virtual networking. So they made international connections just by being in the same place at the same time. And it worked. And I think we just have to educate people in terms of letting them know how to make the most of the bits they have. And again, from a sponsor perspective, using the chat rooms and going out into the networking rooms and actually physically trying to just network but do it virtually, it's just an art. You have to learn how to do it, and once you've got the knack, then I think it's more powerful as well. You can meet more people.
We interestingly, we're now getting involved in virtual events, but live virtual events. So this is the next phase, Paul, whereby the scary part. So we are, you know, we're currently doing all the pre-production and technical work on quite a large live streamed event, and that's going to involve a sizable audience in Japan, an audience in America, a UK audience, and we're going to have to, but we're still, we may come a cropper on this, but we're still going to be feeding in all the animation, feeding in all the graphics, handling all the audio. So, I mean, this all boils down to how good your broadband connection is ultimately, but we should we should be okay, he said. But ultimately, there's almost like a natural progression now between, okay, and we're still doing live events, we're still doing virtual events, but virtual live is the next biggie. So I don't know if you fancy that in the future.
We're getting there slowly. I think it's probably let's see someone. I kind of need to see someone else do it. Whereas I think the awards, we took a real punt early on and we just said we're going to do it, and we did it, and we were probably a bit of a pioneer in the space to do that. I'm not sure I'm ready to be a pioneer in the hybrid space.
Oh no, that's it. Well, I think what is there? So how can people get involved with Family Business United and find out more? And where can they find you on social media, online?
So we are ranked number 1 in the world for family business on Twitter. So at FamilyBizPaul, so BIZ Paul on Twitter. The website familybusinessunited.com is a global resource centre. We're ranked number one in the top 100 of global family business influence as well, which is fantastic for us. But there's lots of resources out there, and actually any family business, big or small. So we go from the smallest butchers on the sort of a high street in Bridport right up to JCB and share the news for everybody. So yeah, familybusinessunited.com is the best place to start.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
And I always ask a question at the end of all of these podcasts. My question for you would be, what is your favourite film?
Well, that's easy. We discussed this over dinner the other night. It's Schindler's List. I think everybody should watch Schindler's List, and it's not a popular choice in terms of, I think it's got big messages and big stories, and I think we should learn from the past. So for me, it touched a raw nerve. It was the first film it's the only film I've ever been to the cinema with my mum to watch, and it was the first film she'd seen at a cinema for about 30 years, and we left in silence, and it made us think, and it's really made me think about things in a different perspective, and I think it should be on the school agenda for everybody, just so we don't forget. So yeah, I'm afraid it's not a jolly happy one. It's quite a serious one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that's really interesting.
When you come out of the cinema and you think, if I breathe, I'm going to cry. That's when you know you've seen something special.
Yeah, it was really powerful, and it touched a nerve for us. But that's the power of film, and it's the power of what you guys do, and it goes flip circle back to the awards and what you did for us, which was fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Paul. I'll leave it there for today, but thank you, Paul Andrews, for joining us on Looks Like We Made It. You can catch us on Spotify, on Apple Music, and wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn at Howell Film, and of course take a look at Family Business United and all the wonderful stuff they do. So for this week, that is us, but thank you, Paul. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, and well, thank you.
Cool, thank
Bye.
you.